Okay, we are going to start sharing this session on dynamics of angling vulnerability, the mechanisms and processes. And unfortunately, I'm the first speaker of this session and also at the same time the session organizer. So you will tell me after 12 minutes. This first talk is kind of a framework presentation, but it's not. It really has very limited to do with angling vulnerability in a biological sense, but I will come towards the end telling you why I think this is relevant in this session. And this is really an hypothesis talk. So there's very little, ultimate data here, but I want to present some thoughts I had on this problem, what is motivating anglers. So if you look at this picture, what you will see here is ultimate joy and pride and excitement. You see it in the eyes, and probably you can measure it in the bloodstream. But this is a very rare event, right? Catching a trophy fish, or actually sometimes catching something at all, if it's a low abundance fish, it's a rare event. When it happens, it creates intensive joy. Everybody in the room who is an angler will say yes to that. So my question is this rare event, the joy you get when it suddenly happens, is that the first principle that keeps you hooked to fishing? We go to social science and look at how social scientists have measured motives. And the classical one is this experience preference scale that has been around since the 70s. It's typically a set of items, a set of statements that people have to rate in terms of the importance. You have things that have to do with catch, you have things that have nothing to do with catch, like being out there and so on. And the typical result of all of this research is that the non-catch aspects, for example here, the setting aspects, the relaxation aspects, the social aspects, rank higher than the catch motives. And if you look carefully, the catch items, for example, to catch many fish in this study, they cluster under not a catch motive dimension, but it's a consumptive dimension. So there's not a singled out motive that is to catch fish. It's subsumed in the challenge aspects of fishing, it's subsumed in the consumption motives. It's not a standalone motive. So we cannot really learn about catch uncertainty as a motivator from this type of research because it's not even explicit in the wording of the items. And some say, well, in fact, there is nothing like a catch motive. A catch motive, and this goes back to the fundamental paper in 1976 by the developer of the scale who said, don't even attempt. Catch is a vehicle to contribute to very fundamental motives, such as achievement, excitement, and so on. The next research tradition looks at determinants of satisfaction, or this is a study which we did on the determinants of the utility that anglers associate with fishing, with different attributes of the experience, and we get closer to understanding that catch uncertainty matters. I want to draw you here to this diminishing marginal return figure here, where the importance of catch per day on the utility is shown. This finding is repeated also in satisfaction studies, and what it shows is that more and more fish don't increase your satisfaction or your utility. It's diminishing marginal returns, fishing gets boring, and therefore there's no utility gain. However, if we go from the origin, from not catching anything to catching one, that's the big increase in the utility. And this tells me that not catching has a utility when that game is mastered ultimately. Secondly, if we look at the utility of big fish, you see a different pattern. It's a linear increase. Some other studies have shown even an exponential increase. And what's the difference? Well, generally, the probability of catching large fish is very uncertain. Large fish are a rare good. So actually, rareness contributes to the utility linearly or even exponentially. So we get closer to catch uncertainty being relevant indirectly. The third type of measurements human dimensions have done is the catch orientation scale. It's been around since the 80s actually. It's a set of items that measures the attitudes of people to catch aspects. Don't look at the details. We have 4 dimensions: catching something, catching numbers of fish, catching large fish, and retaining fish. If you look at the items that have been used, none of them formulates an attitude to catch uncertainty. So again, we don't have something to actually measure what I want to measure. However, we recently added such items to a study in coastal pike anglers, and just look at the mean scores here of the angler sample, what is relevant and less relevant to them. So the highest mean scores actually got the not catching fish at all, or the catch something items. The second highest was catching trophy fish. Then there were two with if there's no guarantee to catching, and catching numbers that ranked lowest. Importantly, again, catching numbers is less important than catching big fish or catching something at all. And again, catching something at all is uncertain, right? It's a measure of a fishing day can be good even if I don't catch anything, right? You accept that you are not successful all the time, and the big fish item again shows what we found in the motive scale as well. But directly asking for the attitude to catch uncertainty again doesn't really reveal its importance. And the issue is we make failure conscious to the respondent. We kind of confront the respondent with uncertainty, and when that's the case, people opt for, well, I want to catch at least something, right? You're not saying I'm really driven by not catching. So the methods, all of them, not really help us to understand whether catch uncertainty matters. If you would plot, and this is completely theoretical, how commercial fishers would scale on these, rate these scales, they would be completely different, right? Commercial fishers would really scale high on catching many fish. They would scale very low on not catching at all, and then something in between. What this simply, I want to say is, commercial fishers and recreational fishers both catch fish, but for very different reasons, very likely. You cannot take over models of commercial fisher behavior to how recreational anglers think, behave, feel, etc. There's one study that looked at catch uncertainty directly, so we actually designed a choice experiment where there are two types of certainties. So you can actually have a certain risk that you don't catch, like on 5 out of 10 days, I'm not catching anything. That's the certainty of catch. And you can be ambiguous about what you catch. So you don't know what you catch. That's the catch uncertainty. And we wanted to actually expose anglers to these two things and see what they prefer. And the economists were saying, people don't like being ambiguous, right? People, like in general human behavior, we want certainty over uncertainty. So my postdoc, who is an agricultural economist, he was like, this is our hypothesis, people should go for risk. Okay, so how did we study this? We actually had a choice experiment. We had different attributes of the fishing experience, and we had two attributes where we added a question mark. So how likely is it to achieve a big fish or to catch at all, which was part of the design. And this is how we implemented it. So you expose the people to different choice options, and you see here the level, for example, 75%. You do not catch fish on 7 out of 8 days out of 10, right? Or you simply don't know what you catch. And the results of this choice experiment clearly showed this is relative to the ambiguous situation. The base is not knowing what to catch, and this is the preference for catching at all and catching big fish. And you see for different angler types, many of these preferences are negative. So in other words, people or anglers are not economically rational actors. They prefer ambiguous situations. They prefer not knowing what to catch over knowing with certainty I will fail on 5 out of 10 days. They don't want to hear this, right? They don't prefer certainty. So we are all very irrational. This goes to a literature that has not been really studied well in our field. There's only one thought piece here. Is there the gaming nature of fishing, right? Sometimes you win, often you lose. Is this something that drives addiction? Question mark. I really would highlight to study this paper. It's really interesting to think about that. I'm not saying angling is addictive, but the point is that the qualities of angling, to fail a lot, is something that might create joy addiction in a sense. And then I looked into very basic neurobiological literature about reward-seeking behavior of humans. So a couple of papers here, 2 examples where you have over time a situation where you get a reward that is small but regular. And on the other side, you have a reward that changes in dimension and it's very uncertain. Sometimes you win, often you lose. And the studies checking this up with males and females have very consistently found that the males strongly prefer this type of reward-seeking behavior, while the females strongly prefer this type of behavior in different cultures, by the way. And if you think about what fishing is, most of the time, unless you're in a put and take fishery or something like this, you will have this type of reward-seeking behavior. So I know I'm on thin ice, and we have male bias all over the world, and there are more reasons that contribute to that bias than that. I acknowledge this. But I think fundamentally the brains and the reward-seeking behavior males have kind of contribute or might contribute that fishing is simply more enjoyable and may draw more male into the activity. To conclude, catch uncertainty might be subconsciously a motive that operates on our reward-seeking behavior. It might be a first principle why this creates pleasure. The gaming nature might actually be a reason why we are so irrational, why we overinvest time, money, resources into an activity that is, we are spending so much money that exceeds fish flesh value. Why? Because it creates dopamine kind of thing. And the conventional social sciences have not been able to show that because they work with the conscious mind. And when you expose Dave Phillip, what do you prefer? Not catching or catching? Exactly, right? So you can't reveal it with these classical methods. And finally, I think recreational fishers are a different breed, at least compared to commercial fishers. And why does this matter? And now I come to the final slide. It matters because the dynamics of behavior differs, especially if the biomass of the abundance goes down, and maybe we have evidence for fish learning, which drives the catch rates down. That might be actually a hidden incentive for recreational anglers to continue fishing, to continue fishing, to continue fishing, even at very low stock sizes, which then might contribute to overexploitation and all those issues. And those dynamics will differ fundamentally from how commercial fishers would operate. Thank you very much. So there's time for questions, and I'm running around. Yes.
No question?
This might not quite fit, but when an angler goes out, whether they're trophy fishing or whether they're just out to try to catch anything, it's a decision on gear, right? A trophy fisherman is going to have the gear that is meant to catch larger fish. So can you use that gear type to look at what preferences are with what they're fishing?
In a sense, yes. I mean, what anglers do with the specialization is try to manage that gaming nature, right? To be skilled, to improve the probability of catching. So it's actually, they want to catch, and it's a response to the difficulty of the catch. Large fish are more difficult than small fish. Low abundance predator fish are less easy to catch than high abundance fish. So this gear choice kind of is a reflection of what I would call rec-queen dynamics. So essentially the predator, in this case angler, adapting to increasing the chances of being successful, which then creates the joy. So I think that's the mechanism.
So thank you, Robert. Very interesting. There's a lot of these angler apps growing at the moment, right? And then we try to get anglers to report their trips and data and so on, and we want to give them something back. And we talk a lot about statistics. One of the statistics is catch rates. So based on your thoughts, is that a good idea to provide these catch rates as a feedback to anglers?
I think it's a good idea because in the conscious minds it matters, and you have utility gain with catch rate increases. So what I'm talking about really is subconscious issues, right? If I think it's not a good idea to be telling them the certainty of not catching. like the probability of not catching. And I'll tell you an anecdote here, because I was working in the lagoon fisheries in northern Germany where the stock was declining, and we got a project to work on that. And the angler effort was not really dwindling strongly because there were rumors, yeah, it was declining, but it's not so sure whether it is. And when we published our research by saying it's certain that the stock is dwindling, at that moment the guides got all the loss in the bookings because this rumor thing was now certain. So that could actually be a displacement effect if you tell that type of certainty for the rare good, in this case large fish. Okay, thank you very much.